Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We're reading from Srimad BHagavatam, 5th canto, the activities of Maharaj Priyavrata from the 1st chapter, the 10th verse, which is in prose, and therefore we cannot chant it all together. It will be chaos. So, Bhagavanapi bharatatat upanitarhana sukta vakena titaram ujita guna kanavatar sujaya priyavratam adipurushastam sadhya hasavaloka iti huvacha. Bhagavan, Lord Brahma, api, moreover, Bharata, O King Pariksit, tad, by them, upanita, brought forward, arhanaha, worshipable paraphernalia, shukta, according to Vedic etiquette, vakena, by language, atitaram, highly, udita, praised, gunagana, qualities, avatara, because of the descent, Sujayaha, whose glories, Priyavratam, unto Priyavrata, Adipurush, the original person, Tam, unto him, Sadhaya, with compassion, Hasha, smiling, Avalokaha, who's looking, iti, thus, ha, certainly, uvacha, said. Translation. My dear King Pariksit, because Lord Brahma had finally descended from Satyaloka to Bhuloka, Narada Muni, Prince Priyavrata and Svayambhuva Manu came forward to offer him objects of worship and to praise him in highly qualified language, according to Vedic etiquette. At that time, Lord Brahma, the original person of this universe, felt compassion for Priyavrata and looking upon him with a smiling face, spoke to him as follows. Purport. That Lord Brahma descended from Satyaloka to see Priyavrata indicates that the matter was very serious. Narada Muni had come to advise Priyavrata about the value of spiritual life, knowledge, renunciation and bhakti. And Lord Brahma knew that Narada's instructions were very impressive. Therefore, unless Lord Brahma personally went to Gandhamadana Hill to request Priyavrata, Lord Brahma knew that Prince Priyavrata would not accept his father's order. Brahma's purpose was to break Priyavrata's determination. Therefore Brahma first looked upon Priyavrata with compassion. His smile and compassionate features are also indicated that although Brahma would request Priyavrata to accept household life, Priyavrata would not be out of touch with devotional service. By the blessing of a Vaisnava, everything is possible. This is described in Bhakti-rasamrta-sindhu as krpa-siddhi, or perfection attained simply by the blessings of a superior person. One usually becomes liberated and perfect by executing the regulative principles set down in the sastras. Nonetheless, many persons have achieved perfection simply by the blessings of a spiritual master or superior. Priyavrata was the grandson of Lord Brahma, and as joking competition sometimes takes place between grandson and grandfather. In this case, also Priyavrata was determined to remain in meditation, whereas Brahma was determined that he ruled the universe. Thus, Lord Brahma's affectionate smile and glance meant, "My dear Priyavrata, you have decided not to accept household life, but I have decided to convince you that you must accept it." Actually, Brahma had come to praise Priyavrata for his high standard of renunciation, austerity, penance, and devotion, so that he would not be deviated from devotional service, even though he would accept household life. In this verse, one important word is Sukta Vakena by Vedic hymns. In the Vedas, there's the following prayer to Lord Brahma: Hiranya Garbha Samavar Tata Gre Bhutasya Jata Patir Eka Sit. Brahma was received with the appropriate Vedic hymns, and because he was welcomed according to the Vedic etiquette, he was very pleased. Om Jnana Timarandasya Gyanandana Salakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayambhuva Kadamayam Narati Swaparantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Shri Yuta Pada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaisnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Sivisakanvitam Scha. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesa Govika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sutadevi Pranamami Haripire Vanchakalpatarubhyacha Sakritva Sindhuvivacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaisnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Priyavrata had understood that the goal of life was devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And therefore, he had no interest in expanding his material facility, and he decided to stay a brahmachari. And in this way, to keep his involvement with the material energy to the minimum, so that he could fully focus on spiritual life. However, Lord Brahma came with a different purpose. Lord Brahma desired that Priyavrata would sacrifice his personal interest for the greater interest of mankind. And this is an important consideration. We cannot only simply be concerned with our own interest, what is good for me, but rather we should take the greater interest at heart, what is required for Lord Chaitanya's mission, what is needed for Srila Prabhupada's movement. Because in that, we come to a greater level in devotional service. That is a spirit of sacrifice. So this chapter, describing the activities of Maharaj Priyavrata, are addressing that topic of sacrificing the individual interest for the greater interest of society at large. And that is to be considered. But at the same time, one cannot compromise one's personal interest. One cannot simply sacrifice himself for the greater good and losing his own spiritual life. So Maharaj Priyavrata was being reassured that even although he would become involved in taking a managerial position, that he would not lose his devotional service. That blessing and that protection he received. So in this way, we have to carefully weigh our objectives in life. And therefore, spiritual life is not just to consider what is our nature, what is our personal need, and so on. But ultimately, it is to be determined by our superiors what is the priority, our personal development or the greater social need. And a balance is to be found between. So, of course, Priyavrata was existing in another time, a time when submission to superiors was very natural. Now that is very unnatural and therefore very difficult. And now there is so much rebellion. Even if the rebellion is not outright and open, it is a inner mental rebellion, and where even innerly we just cannot submit to the will of a superior, and still doubting it. But is this the right instruction? Is this suitable? Is it considering my nature? This instruction that I just received, is my superior actually aware of my nature? Am I protected? But by simply becoming the willing instrument in the hands of our superiors, are we receiving blessings? And Srila Prabhupada explains that in spiritual life, blessings are a more important factor than our own personal endeavor. In other words, by all our personal endeavors in devotional service, we make so much spiritual advancement. But yet, by the blessings of our superiors that are attained by pleasing them, we get so much greater spiritual benefit. So that is something to keep in mind. And in this way, Priyavrata stands as an example to us, as one who bowed to the will of his superiors, who put his own agenda aside. Although his own agenda was certainly a noble agenda, and an agenda authorized by the scripture. The Nectar of Devotion says that one must become kinkar, or a personal servant. One must become a personal servant. One must, as a personal servant, fulfill the particular desire of one's superior. Not that one becomes a general servant. There is a distinction made between the general servant and the personal servant. And it's that the general servant is acting within devotional service, within the authorized realm of the scriptures and the process. But the personal servant is taking it one step further, because he's acting according to the order of his superiors, his spiritual master. And that is the preferred platform. It is not simple. Sometimes our spiritual master is giving us a particular personal instruction, and other times he does not do so. At other times, he simply wants us to embrace the standard process. It is not that if we are not getting a personal instruction of our spiritual master, that we are being neglected, and that we're sort of feeling, well, what is he really doing for me? No, we are working under his vigilant eye. We are not alone. We are always within the boundaries of his blessings. Even if we are just engaging in the standard activities of devotional service, as Srila Rupa Goswami has outlined the process of sadhana bhakti, as we are taking up some service in Srila Prabhupada's movement. But still, we're working within the boundaries set by our spiritual master. And there's protection. And we cannot go outside. Therefore, one cannot just independently make major changes in one's spiritual life. One cannot independently just change ashram, or just change place, or just make major changes in one's service, unless one has been given that freedom. When we surrender to our spiritual master, at that point we are surrendering our independence, and we are in principle fully submitting ourselves to the will of the spiritual master. And every moment and every aspect of our activities in our life are governed by the desire of the spiritual master. For all practical purposes, it's not possible for a spiritual master to micromanage every aspect of a disciple's life. How would that be possible? And how would that be desirable? Therefore, the spiritual master returns independence to us, but only so much independence as we are using to remain engaged in the service of the spiritual master. So as a disciple is becoming more and more dedicated to the mission of the spiritual master, more and more independence may be given. But generally the mood of a disciple is to seek shelter, because without shelter, what can we do in this material world? Daiviyesa gunamayi mama maya duratyaya mamevanye prapadinte mayam etam tarantite. This maya of mine, this illusory energy of mine, is impossible to overcome. No one has the strength to conquer maya. It cannot be done on the strength of an individual. The only way that we can avoid the influence of maya is by taking shelter of Krishna and his representatives. Then and only then can we rise above maya. Otherwise, we are already finished, already lost the battle. Without shelter, not possible. And that shelter is available in so many forms, and we need all those varieties of shelter. We need the scripture, we need the deities, we need the holy name, we need the association of devotees. I was reading Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur saying, Krishna Nam, Krishna Dham, and Krishna Bhakta Asadur Sambandha. He was saying that through the name, through the holy Dham of Krishna, through the name of Krishna, through the association of the devotees of Krishna, we can save ourselves from the influence of the non-saintly persons. Otherwise, very difficult. Very difficult. So therefore, spiritual life is not just about engaging our natures. Nature is an important factor for a conditioned soul. And as long as we are in the lower stages of devotional service, then our nature will be very strong, and will be there will be a very strong demand of our nature. It is said that in the earlier stages of devotional service, from Shraddha, the initial faith, to sadhu sangha, association with devotees, to becoming fixed in the process, bhajana kriya, to anartha nivriti, trying to become purified from unwanted habits, that in that stage, spiritual life is struggle, is a great struggle, and therefore also struggle with one's nature. That in Nistha, one comes to the point where one can sacrifice one's nature and just place that nature on the second plane if that is what is required for Krishna. Of course, when it is possible to engage one's nature, then it makes sense, because that nature will automatically give us a certain expertise. It's not that it's a sign of surrender that we act against our natural talents, and that the one who cooks the worst makes the best cook, the one who is the hopeless manager, we make him temple president, the one who cannot calculate, we make him in charge of the accounts, the one who cannot drive becomes the temple driver, and so on, because then there's more surrender. Then you have to surrender more, then the sacrifice is greater, because then we totally deny our nature, and we just simply live on sacrifice only. So one could argue that would spiritually be the highest, if we all just sacrifice our nature. It would become quite but that understanding, it would become a chaos, and that understanding is not seeing the positive side of our nature. That naturally, those things that we know how to do, we do them well, and it gives us a lot of opportunity to become creative in the service of Krishna, because we have talents in a certain field. So even the pure devotees who are beyond Nistha or in Nistha and more advanced, they also may engage according to their nature whenever the circumstances allow. But they can also very easily renounce that nature and just act according to the needful and in the situation. So this friction between doing the needful and our nature is an important element in our spiritual life, and both need to be met. Both are require attention. Different devotees may receive different instructions, and now our movement is growing, and it's not only growing in numbers, but it is also growing in complexity. In the earlier days of Srila Prabhupada establishing the preaching mission, this movement was more simple. The membership was more homogeneous, all of a similar age group, all sort of engaged in the same activity. Now there is much more diversity in in different members of this movement, and also more diversity in different programs. And we need a very broad movement, a movement that provides various ways for all kinds of people to engage in Krishna consciousness. Because Krishna consciousness is possible in any condition of life. And therefore, it is meant for all kinds of people. And it is not just a particular stereotype way of practicing Krishna consciousness. So, in one way, engaging one's nature is valuable. In more recent years, a lot of focus is there in individuality, in engaging according to one's nature, in finding one's natural place in Krishna consciousness. In the earlier years of this movement, a lot of emphasis was placed on sacrifice. Sacrifice for the mission. Sacrifice your nature, sacrifice your everything for the mission. Well, both elements are there. In the period where people are looking more for individual expression, we can also see more creative ways of engaging in devotional service, which open up more avenues for more people to connect. So in that way, and which establish our movement in so many layers of society. So that is fine. That is nice. But the sacrificing spirit still remains very valuable. The spirit of simply putting one's own ideas aside for the higher interest. Just like Srila Prabhupada emphasized book distribution. And that emphasis will not go away, no matter what we do. And, there was a time when book distribution was the emphasis of the Hare Krishna movement as a whole, and as only like a very small percentage. This was not part of that book distribution focus. But times have changed, and book distribution had at one point become like a peripheral program, a side program, and less and less a mainstream focus. Now, in more recent years, we see that worldwide there is again a resurgence of book distribution. There's an increase, and the focus also increasing. Just statistics are showing. So as they say, the pendulum swings. It swings from one side to the other. But Srila Prabhupada's desires, they remain valid. Whether our community takes different forms at different historical points in time, Prabhupada's desires are still remaining an exceptional source of blessings. Where can we get such blessings as we can get in simply trying to fulfill Srila Prabhupada's desires? And therefore, again and again, that will come to the forefront. Even if at times the focus shifts a little, but remains within the boundaries of authorized Vaishnava behavior, but just misses the emphasis that Srila Prabhupada gave, or the points that he stressed, then we'll dry up a little bit. So therefore our connection with Srila Prabhupada is extremely important and must remain in the focus of our movement. Then our movement will flourish. And at the same time, we also cannot stay in 1977. You cannot say, after 1977, no more development. Right? Whatever Prabhupada said from 66 to 77, that's it, and there's nothing else. It can't be like that either, because there is Kala Desa Patra, there is time, place and circumstances, there is a natural need, and certain things may be provided for now, according to time, place and circumstance that were not so prominent in the presence of Srila Prabhupada. So in a sense, we're following a process which is chalked out, which is known. Many people in the world, they don't like it when someone joins a spiritual movement because they feel now they have just given up all creativity in their life. Now they're just going to walk a stereotype path which is not their own. They're just given up the discovery and the adventure of life, and they're just now going to walk a path which is just all chalked out. Well, in one sense, our path is chalked out. But it is, in another sense, it's not chalked out at all. There is an element of discovery within our spiritual life, an element of finding our way. And that is also bona fide, but within boundaries, within the boundaries of the scripture, within the boundaries of the instructions of the acharyas, within the boundaries of the standards given by our founder acharya, and within the boundaries of what our spiritual master is offering. So therefore, we are never relieved from using our brain. It's not simply blindly following a handbook and, where you just live your life, and at any time you have your handbook in your pocket, and when there's a decision you just look, and in the back in the index and page number 12, and there it says whether you have to go left or right. Where do we go? Left, okay. Follow the book. It's not so simple. In the 11th canto of Srimad BHagavatam, stress is placed in the Uddhava Gita upon applying transcendental knowledge with one's own intelligence. And that point is very important. So we have to also find ways to be Krishna consciousness, to be in Krishna consciousness. And we have to decide. Where are we going to place ourselves. For example, Srila Prabhupada pointed out that Krishna consciousness is not dependent on any external arrangement. That Krishna consciousness is simply a matter of taking shelter of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra wholeheartedly. And that all the external arrangements, such as temples, communities, and colleges, and libraries, and all these things are of a secondary nature. And they may come and go, external arrangements, because after all, they are part of the material energy. There's no guarantee that buildings in this world will remain, that, Alexandria had the biggest library in the world at that time, right, in ancient history, and it's like all destroyed. It's like one of the big, and in Bangladesh, some huge in 19, I think it was 93, when the mosque was broken in Ayodhya, then in Bangladesh, they retaliated and they burned Gaudiya Vaishnava libraries, and many of the books that actually were our books of our tradition were destroyed in that year. Many. I mean, it's like the biggest loss to our history, to our Gaudiya Vaishnava history, is that particular library in Sylhet that was burned. So like that, we are seeing that Rupa Goswami constructed a huge temple in Vrindavan, and Aurangzeb destroyed it, just like that. And how is it possible? It is the nature of the material energy. It is the nature that things in this world will manifest and that they will cease to exist. But our connection, our internal connection in devotional service with Krishna is the essence. And that has to be strengthened and strengthened and strengthened and strengthened. And nothing can interfere with that. Not our nature. Who cares about our nature? To hell with our nature, if it comes to our connection with Krishna. If that nature comes in the way of our connection with Krishna, then what's the use of being natural, of being an individual, of it's my way, I have to do it this way? Why? Are we pre-programmed robots who have to act according to the configuration of our hormones or our genetic codes? Why? Why we have to dance like puppets when we get 13 years old or younger, and sex desire suddenly emerges, and we have to, from that day on, just be controlled by it? It's my nature. Why is it our nature? It's the nature of your hormones. It's not your nature, or not our nature. So, like this, one has to become internally very detached. One has to become very detached from what is dictated by the body. We have to internally thoroughly understand, this is not me. This is not me. This is actually imposed upon me by the three modes of material nature. Prakriti, kriyamanani, gunakarmani, sarvasa, ahankara vimudatma, kartaham iti manyate. Actually, the three modes of material nature are the doer, are doing all these things, and we are just going along. We are not the doer. And through our body, the three modes of material nature are imposing so many things upon us. And therefore, we have to thoroughly detach. Every devotee has to stop identifying with all these dictates. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta writes this essay called The Real and the Apparent Self. And in that essay, he makes a statement that for so long I have served you. And he's speaking to the body and the mind. And now he says, and I will no longer identify with all the things that you are dictating to me as my needs. I will no longer identify with them. I will simply only act for my one need, my need to deepen my relationship with Krishna. To some, this may smell like the resolve of a sannyasi, right? Who has this focus, right? But the sannyasi is described as the spiritual master of all the ashrams and is meant to remind everyone of his duty. And it is said, Vairagya Vidya Nitya Bhakti Yogam, that the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya is resting on Vairagya. And the Vairagya is basically this Vairagya: to stop identifying with what is dictated to us through the material energy, through our bodies, minds, and so on, and senses. Then we can take to the more important point. What is good for Krishna? And as I was saying, Srila Prabhupada stressed book distribution. Of course, now all of us are thinking about that, right? And are sort of, most of us have become more favorable towards such an activity as distributing books than we would have been on our own. Yeah? On our own, we would have thought like, well, it's not for most, it would not have been the calling in life, something I have dreamt of ever since I was small. When I grow up, I'm going to distribute books, right? Jai. It took some change, some adjustment. Srila Prabhupada instilled this desire within us, and in that way established a greater good. Yeah. Some people they like missions. They like to be missionaries. They like it because it simplifies life. Because then you don't have to think. Then you just have to go for the mission. So book distribution. Only, and they talk like that, right? As if there is nothing else. No, there's nothing else. That is wonderful, but it is born in a somewhat fundamentalist spirit. It gets born there when we are still conditioned. Then it is born in a somewhat fundamentalist spirit. A fundamentalist spirit means we try to simplify the complexity of life and reduce it to a few major factors. It's black, it's white, and of course, if one begins like that, then it all becomes purified. Because eventually, whatever we engage in Krishna's service becomes purified. So, therefore we see what started out as a fundamentalist motivation can turn into a pure dedication to one particular thing. So, what starts out like passion, we passionately are going to change the world, can transform into a pure transcendental motivation. So the essence is how much we connect in devotional service. And we must become very thoughtful about that. We cannot just be so passionate that we never have time to think about our life, about our spiritual life. There is a need to take time to limit ourselves so that we can think and that we can actually internally grow and internally strengthen our commitment to Krishna. Commitment to Krishna is not only a matter of saying, Krishna, I am yours. Yes, I am yours, with determination. It is a matter of understanding that, like, how I am Krishna's. And like I was saying, that we really see, I have no connection with all these material desires. These so-called, all these material desires are not my material desires. They are simply the desires that are related to the three modes of material nature, but they're not at all mine. They just present themselves as mine now, due to the fact that I'm in this body. But they're not mine at all. I have nothing to do with them. They're totally alien to me, totally strange. Every species has to automatically will act in certain ways. Dogs lift their leg. How do they know? Right? It's just wired in the species. It's just something that happens when one enters into that body. But the urge is very strong. So we have to see how much we are controlled by what is not ours, and how much we have made it ours. Therefore, one has to think about that seriously and say, let go. Let go. Let go of all these things. And that is for all members, all followers of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu must embrace this kind of spirit. And that is what we see in the associates of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So incredibly detached from normal, so-called normal worldly relationships. Just say, what is the value of all this? So Priyavrata was being called upon by Lord Brahma to suddenly give up his plan for becoming self-realized, which was a good plan. Stay disentangled. And he had to take up some entanglement to become a greater influence of Krishna consciousness in the world. So it's very nice to meditate a little bit on this spirit of sacrifice, and each and all of us can try and awaken a little bit more spirit of sacrifice, sacrifice for the interest of this movement, rather than just my spiritual life is a very, very nice spiritual life with a very, very nice spiritual ashram, with lots of nice spiritual pictures on the wall, and all the flowers are offered to Krishna, and everything is so spiritual and so beautiful and so wonderful and so great. But in my heart, there is a vacuum, because in my heart, I'm still more concerned with my own comfort than with the comfort of Krishna. And therefore, my whole Krishna world is still not enough to change the condition of my heart. Things like that are deep topics to think about when we have the time, when life is, after all, the modes of material nature come in waves, sometimes tidal wave like Queen's Day, and then after we land somewhere and maybe have some time to even think about and become thoughtful. Thoughtfulness is an important quality for a devotee, because everyone has to consciously choose for Krishna. Ultimately, as Srila Prabhupada said, everyone is flying his own plane. And I'll end with that, because time is moving along. But Prabhupada explains that when a plane is on the ground, so much support is there. The whole ground staff is there, filling up the petrol or whatever, and loading the plane, and people are walking in and out with earphones on and papers, and there's a lot going on around the plane. But once the plane is in the air, then it's on its own, Srila Prabhupada explained. So everyone flies his own plane, he said. So ultimately, we have to all ourselves make the connection with Krishna. And that connection with Krishna can only be fully established if we let go of the material connections. So sooner or later, everyone has to just say, yes, only Krishna. Kechit kevalaya bhaktya vasudev parayana. Only bhakti, only Krishna, nothing else. All right, thank you so much. Any question? Any comments? Mm-hmm.
In this session, Brahma is convincing Priyavrata. There's one point there, that it is the order of the Lord. That's why when the spirit he's hesitant to go to heaven. Brahma says it's the order of the Lord.
Good, thank you. Nice comment. We'll leave it like that. Any other question? Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Who are the superiors? Yes, in a way, all the Vaishnavas are superiors, because all the Vaishnavas are pointing us towards Krishna. But first of all, we're speaking about our spiritual authorities. We have our spiritual master. We are always under the care of some Vaishnavas. Srila Prabhupada arranged that in the form of, in a somewhat institutional form, temples, temple presidents, and so on. But previously, communities of Vaishnavas existed. And in the community of Vaishnavas, there was a leader. And the leader was known as the Mahant. So the Mahant was counted as the senior Vaishnava, who is the leader in a particular group of Vaishnavas. So there are naturally such authorities. We have a number of such seniors. We have naturally, we have temple presidents, and something is there. We have disciples of Srila Prabhupada, they carry a certain authority. We have sannyasis, they carry authority. And we have other devotees, senior devotees. Those are superiors, particularly the ones that I'm referring to. And they give us shelter. And we go there for advice, we go there for... and sometimes we just ask them. And we just do what they want. It's like, at one point in my life, I was in Vrindavan, and I could no longer be the temple president because some people were were making arrangement to get me out of the way. So I had to take up a new service. And I had a van, and I wanted to use that van for preaching. And then other people were disagreeing and said, no, we can't give him that van, we don't want to give him the van. And I was sort of a bit in a fight with them over the van. And in the same week, suddenly Hridaya Chaitanya, here from Radhadesh, wrote me a letter offering me a van, right? And then, so I had a van in India they didn't want to give me. There was a van being offered here. So what do I do now? And then, out of nowhere, Trivikram Maharaj appeared. And they made me share a room with him, which, he's way my senior. And I just asked him, I said, what shall I do? He said, go over there. Wherever it's easy, just follow that path, follow that path. And that's how I wound up in Europe. Otherwise, I would have been still in India. I would have been preaching in India. But by a superior, I followed his instruction. He just told me, go to Europe. Then I went. Yeah? And now, my whole spiritual life took a turn and I was in Europe. He wasn't my guru, but it was Krishna's arrangement, that out of nowhere, suddenly this senior devotee appears. for no real reason, I share a room with him, right? And apparently no real reason. And he just was the one to, okay, tell me what to do at that time. Yeah. So in this way, superiors come at a different point in time. They happen to be there. Who's the nearest superior? Yeah. Of course, the spiritual master is the ultimate superior and should sanction. Right? But there are always superiors around who are there to guide us. We're not alone. We're in a community of Vaishnavas, and we must learn to take shelter of that community. Because alone, if we're just alone in a community of Vaishnavas, and we're all alone, and we're all trying to figure out on our own how to do it, but we hear a lot, and then, it's like an interesting class today, take a few points from that. Yesterday was also good, take a few points from that, and then I'm going to sort of doctor myself. No, that's not the way. Then we're not taking shelter of the Vaishnavas. We need to take shelter of the Vaishnavas. Because without, it's going to be tough to survive. So we look for the senior Vaishnavas. Where are they? And we go and find them. And we ask them, what do you think? What's your opinion? Like that, we take shelter. We need, done, finished, no more? Okay. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.